Welcome to the Blonde Runner podcast with Coach Laura Erickson, where she shares her healthy living tips as a running and triathlon coach and mother of 4.
It's fun to talk to people in the community and have them share what they think. You're going to hear interviews from 4 ladies. We've got Kiersten will be the first, Kim's next, Traci, and Linnea will be last. So enjoy. How are you, Kiersten?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Hey, thank you for being willing to share your love-hate relationship with me.
Absolutely.
So I know a lot of people have this love-hate relationship for running, and I wanted to get a few people's opinions on why and what has changed it. So when did you start running and why?
I started about 8 years ago, and a lot of it was I had a lot of anger and depression, and I needed an outlet.
Okay. All right. So anger and depression. Where did you get the idea of starting it?
I was doing weightlifting before, and I just wasn't getting, I was getting the endorphins, but just I wasn't getting that feeling of like accomplishment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's definitely, well, they're different. They're, one's
Yeah.
different than the other one. There's kind of a freedom I know for me that I get with running. And I like that you mentioned anger and depression, because really it is kind of my running is my therapy. I'm not kidding.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. So describe this love-hate relationship that you have with running.
So getting started, honestly, is the hardest part for me, just to get started. And then that first mile, I feel like once I get past that first mile, and during that first mile, I have to constantly tell myself, just get to the second mile and everything will be fine. So really, it's just all about getting started. And then like on long distance runs, I have to sit there and tell myself, after 10 miles, I'm like, girl, you just did 10. Come on now. like keep going. You got this,
I love that you say it that way, because I totally talk to myself like that. Girl,
yes,
you do it. Because I've explained this before, but you sort of have a devil and an angel on your shoulder when you're running sometimes.
Yes, you do. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but it's that will. I think what's great about running and something is that there's a total accomplishment you get in it. If you say, hey, I did a marathon, everyone's like, oh, that's obviously recognizable as a hard accomplishment. That means something, which is great.
Yes.
And I do think that a lot of people I remember I have literally I was a 5,000 meter runner in college, and I've literally run hundreds of 5,000 meters, but every first mile is like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Can I do this? And it seems like the habit that I feel a little the first mile, but then I get into it and I'm doing just fine. And I've done it so many times before. Of course I can do it. 3 miles isn't that far, right? But
yes,
it is kind of that, it takes a little while for the body to be ready for it, I think, sometimes.
Yes, absolutely.
So when you said getting started back in running, is that like after having kids, or is that just every time you run?
After having kids. So the first time I started running, I had my 2 boys. They're 15 and 14. And now I've just recently started back in this January. Mm-hmm. I just had 2 girls back to back. So.
Wow. So I can completely relate to,
yeah.
And I think other people listening in can relate to this. It is harder, obviously when you usually have weight to lose, it isn't as easy to run. And often it's okay to walk, run when you start, or start on the elliptical. You don't have to go full on running when you first start, especially coming back from having babies, because your ligaments are loose and different. But so how do you get yourself getting back into after babies?
So my first time was really hard. You're talking. With the boys, actually, that one was actually pretty easy because I've never run before.
Oh,
so I didn't have an expectation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The second time was really tough because I knew where I was before I had the babies. And I was really frustrated with my body because it wasn't doing what, I expected it to a little bit better. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect to run 20 miles right off the gun, but I couldn't even walk 1 mile. So I was really frustrated.
That's and take us to the place you were before you got pregnant, right before you had
So before I had the babies, I was actually training for a marathon, and I was doing half marathons. I was running 13 miles every weekend, just on the trail by my house. And so I was doing half marathons, and then I got the idea of, why don't I do a full? Halves are starting to seem a little bit easy. Let's make it a little bit more challenging.
No, people listening are going, whatever. Like,
I know.
to do a marathon. And I'm like, it can be. I love that you're saying that, because you work up to it and it's like, I can do it, and you did.
Yeah. And I was doing it every weekend. No joke. Every Saturday I was out there doing 13.1 miles, same route. So it became pretty easy. And then I found out I was pregnant about 2 months in, training for the full marathon. So
you are used to, like, hey man, I've been able to do all these miles, and now you're going, and now I can't do 1 mile. So.
Yeah, I can't even walk 1 mile. I couldn't even walk a half a mile. I was so frustrated.
It definitely seems like our mind, like, remembers where we were and totally thinks, oh yeah, I can do it. But then our body, like, thinks differently. It's like, no, I don't think so.
Yes, it's a constant battle, honestly. Even like during a run, it's a constant battle. So
it really is. And I think that's okay for people to understand, because, a lot of people think runners are kind of crazy that we love to do. But I mean, love is a strong word and hate is a strong word. And I think we kind of bounce between the two with running. So.
Yes.
Let's talk about what in your opinion is there to love about running, and what is there to hate?
Oh gosh. I love the endorphins I get. I love how I feel even just after a mile.
Mm-hmm.
I love the feeling of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
My husband always tells me, he can tell when I haven't run for the day.
Oh.
I'm like so grouchy.
He's like, okay, I'll watch the kids. You go on a run.
Yes. So he knows I need those endorphins in order to survive the day. Because my saying every day is, if I can run 1 mile, I can seriously do anything that day.
Oh, I love that. Like, I have my best thinking on the run. Once you get past the first, right, then we kind of get into that mode where, like, we're feeling all right and our head is clear and we think really well, and everything's into place, when everything seems to make more sense. So I love that. What is there? I mean, I hate to talk about what people hate about running, but the truth is, things are hard. Not everything is easy with running. What are the things difficult with running?
Oh my gosh. Right now I'm still recovering from St. George Marathon, and my quads are so mad, and my calves. And there were things that, since it was my first time on that course, I trained, but obviously I didn't train for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I am hating my lower half right now.
And downstairs is like, oh.
Yes, I actually just stayed upstairs for the last 3 days. Today is the first day I've been able to go back downstairs.
And movement is good, and but yeah, it's a downhill, so that's kind of tough. So, but yeah, recovering, or I remember getting my husband running for a while, and he's like, when does it become fun? And I'm like, well, it's fun when it's over.
Yeah. And I feel like finding the right equipment too, like shoes, because I was actually starting to hate it because I couldn't find the right shoes. I was getting blisters all over my feet. And so that's when I went to Striders and found the shoes that I wear now. Mm-hmm. But man, I gotta tell you, getting on the treadmill with blisters on my toes all the time because I just needed to, I really hated it. I did not look forward to it during the day. So once I found the right equipment.
Yeah. And then you're not in pain, because running is painful enough, but
yeah,
good pain too. I mean, we need some sort of stress. We need some push in our life. We need a little bit of pain, but not pushing past, too much pain or constant pain. I think that's another thing. So I like that you mentioned that. Shoes, and also, I know as a coach, for me, like, having people not go too many miles too soon, like easing in so your body can adapt,
Yes. And I've loved learning, like, nutrition, like how to feed and fuel my body for it. Like, I feel like I've gotten so much more knowledge from running than I ever have.
Yeah. And it's what I love about it. And, you having just done a race is, when you're just out there running for exercise, that's one thing. But I particularly love to get people training for something, because it's like a different kind of focus. Would you? Yeah. I think you learn more nutritionally. Yeah. I mean, your focus is completely different. Your focus is on a goal. And so I think that's really good. So even though there's some negatives, you still run. Why?
Why? It's my life. It's my therapy. It's my go-to. I love, like, it's a sport where it's a goal against yourself, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It is you against you, and making yourself, if you can make yourself better than yesterday, that's what it's all about, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Me against the clock. That's how I look at it when I'm doing races. So, well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on it.
You bet.
Have a good day.
You too.
Kim.
Hi.
Hi. So, I'm going to start us off a little differently this time. I think let's go right into, I know that you started with swimming, you went into cross country. That's kind of how you got started. Now, when you first started running, I mean, I know that you did it sort of as dry land training for swimming. Did you hate it when you started, or what was your thoughts on
Oh
running?
yeah. I mean, we hated running. We were swimmers, and running was like a fish trying to.
Yeah, fish out of water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you kind of stuck with it because you were telling me before that you needed a PE credit, and so you you didn't think you could run any more over 2 miles. Is that?
Yeah.
But,
I would go. It's. I would go probably about 2 miles, and then turn around and walk back.
you loathe it. I mean, you had to have it for a PE credit.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, I'm getting through this, right?
That was like I'm getting through it.
So what changed that relationship for you? So that was high school. I'm sure some things have happened since then.
Yeah, it was after, in college I ran some, trying to lose the freshman 15 and
Mm-hmm.
and then after I got my first job, I had time after school or after work, not school. And so I thought, oh, I'll start running again. And I had still there was a lap that was about 3 miles, and that was kind of my limit, and it was painful, and I hated it. But then I got through a wall mentally. I feel like it was 3 or 4 miles that I realized, oh, I just have to get stronger, and then it's doable. And it feels good to run.
So it was like 3 or 4 miles for you. But so you really started you wanted to lose weight. That's why you started running later in college. Is that right?
Yeah, probably, or just to be healthy.
Yeah. Why not? Well, why not do swimming again? Or why did you choose running? Curious.
So that's great question, actually, because running, I've been, through pregnancies, that's always been the first thing that I try to start to do again, because it's so convenient and easy, because I can throw on shoes and go right out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You don't have to get your bag and go to the pool and get wet and shower and everything.
It's a pain to swim. I mean, I loved it, and I've gotten back into swimming at times too, but running is just a lot more. You don't have to drive anywhere, although now I do, because I like to trail run.
Yeah.
But I don't have to worry about getting wet.
Yeah. So have you ever done a triathlon?
I have.
Good.
So
you run. How was the cycling?
I loved road biking. I got into road biking. When was it? It was after I did train for a half marathon, and I thought, I swim. I should road bike too. So I bought a road bike and loved it. Once I got back, we lived just on a great road on Wasatch, near Wasatch, to be able to go long distances. And
so you still run though, even though you love swimming, it takes a little more time. Cycling you love, but running is just a little more convenient still, would you say? Or
Yeah, I'd say running is the most convenient, most bang for your buck. Like I can run for 30 minutes and feel like I've gotten a good workout in. Cycling, I feel like I have to put in an hour.
I agree. I noticed that when I first started cycling. It's like, because it's sort of easy in a way.
Yeah.
Unless it's climbing hills, it's kind of like, unless you put it in a really hard gear or something, then you're burning out the legs. But like for the most part, it seems pretty easy, except on your sit bones. That
Yeah.
hurts. That's
Yeah, the heart rate, it just doesn't get as high as quickly.
I like that you've had some good reasons here why to run. I mean, definitely because it's convenient and you get a lot more bang for your buck. And that's what I've told people too. You burn a lot more calories quicker, I think. But then there's that component where you have to ease into training and not hurt yourself. So, um, you still choose to run. Why would that be? I mean, do you still hate it? Do you still, I mean, what are your thoughts towards running?
Uh, well, this year was the beginning of a new chapter of running for me because it's been on and off again. We've gone through moves a few times and kids and injuries, and I started running this year because I had an elbow injury and I couldn't climb, or biking was even hard because putting weight on the handlebars.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I had to start with walking because even walking was a little hard on my arm.
Yeah.
Like it's like walking with that bent elbow.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, it was really all I could do. So I started walking 10 minutes on the treadmill, and eventually started to add in a minute of running.
Mm-hmm.
And then I increased that increment each time. And then I got up to my 3 mile barrier that I hit. And I thought, okay, I'm going to put in my app, a training program for a 10K just to give myself a goal. And then that turned into putting in the half marathon training program. And I started running on the trails and realized, oh, this is great. This is beautiful and way more enjoyable than running on the road. So that's why I'm running now, just because I love getting out on the trails. And I don't run, I only get on the trail about once a week. I usually do 2 road runs, but
So you do the variety.
I do the 2 road ones because it's convenient and I have 30 minutes to get out and go get some running in. But that would take one day to really go enjoy a nice long run on the trail.
I like that because you get the variety. I think so many people get burnt out of running because it's such a repetitive thing, and it's also hard on the body if you're just doing one plane of motion, which mostly we're in the frontal plane. But if you can kind of incorporate some other movement, it's going to keep you healthier, I think. So
Yeah. Yes, I can feel that my body using more muscles, more core muscles when I'm on a trail.
yeah,
I can appreciate that.
a lot of ankle strength, and it is nice to get it out in nature and like smell that fresh air coming from the trees, and everything.
Mhm.
So I do, if people are listening in, they haven't done a trail run before, give it a try. I mean, usually you need new shoes, and I do have an episode where I talk about like getting started on trail running, so that might be worth a listen.
Which
What are some, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I said I have listened to that actually.
Oh, did you? I hope it was
It
helpful.
was because I just, as I said, I just started trail running this summer.
Yeah. There's a few things to know, but a lot of it's funny because I think sometimes we wait until everything's perfect to try something new, but it's never going to be perfect. You just have to do it. There's a lot of peace in just action, just going for it, even if you don't maybe have the perfect shoes, but there is this, safety things to think about. So definitely listen to that if you haven't. But also I wanted to ask you, what are some goals that you have for yourself? What are for running? Like, you've done a half marathon. Have you done a marathon yet?
I haven't. Um, and I've considered, because I literally just finished the half marathon training program this week. I did my own little half.
Oh, nice. It's like, oh, because you're sort of, maybe it's too early to think about a full.
But I thought, yeah, I mean, well, 2 runs ago, my long run was 15 miles, and I thought I could totally do a full marathon. I feel like I could get myself to that point with it's such a slow process. Like, you can't rush it. You don't need the body needs time to adjust and get stronger, and it's not. I don't like to make it a quick thing, but I felt like oh yes, I feel like I can get to that point. But I also love mountain biking and snowboarding as well.
Oh,
So,
you do a variety. See, and I think that's completely fine. No, I've had people hire me that are like, I really love to hike, and I know you hike. Can I still do, marathon training with hiking? And while you need to do some specific training, for the most part, why not? Snowboard and do the things that you love, because I think that's what it's all about, is enjoying. If you get to the starting line, happy, you're going to do better. As long as you've got those long runs, and there are some important things, but why not have fun, right? Why not have a exercise?
yeah. So going into the winter, I'm trying to evaluate myself and think, what can I do when it's so cold? What will I be able to be consistent at? And what do I want to be able to do in the spring, come spring? Like, do I want to be ready to do something early in the spring? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the winter training, see, and this is, I guess, where, the love-hate relationship kind of changes. One, it changes, if you're training for something. And it's interesting. I worked at Expo booth at the Salt Lake Marathon, or the St. George Marathon recently for the Salt Lake Marathon. But I talked to people there, and I said, "You ready for your race?" And a lot of them were like, "Oh, this is my last marathon." They got to the point where their mileage was high and they're tired of the long training, because marathon training takes a lot of work, but they were there. And then there were others that were like, I'm so ready, it was interesting to kind of see that dynamic. But sometimes we can get burnt out, and then that's when we start to have that hate relationship with running. And I think that's why I love that you are incorporating so much variety. I do that too, because I don't want to hate running. I want to enjoy it. But if I get to a point where, there are days where you have to discipline yourself to do it, and then there are days when it's okay to just do something different. And especially if your body's feeling it, it's okay. You can still get to your goal without actually having to run. But winter time, and that's where a lot of people I know, I had somebody at that booth say, well, I was trying to get people to sign up for an April race, and I'm like, well, I do not run in the winter. This was insane. Right? So they're like, I don't even, but they were from like Orem or something. And I'm like, okay, the snow, it is harder. So what are your thoughts, or what do you do, I guess, in the winter? And I guess it depends on if you're training for something, but how do you stay fit in the winter?
Well, I started in January with my walking.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that on a treadmill. So I'll probably revert a lot back to the treadmill for those 30-minute runs. And then I'll probably just try to bundle up and still do one outside, my long run outside a week.
And that's good. I think the variety is really nice. Some people call it the dread mill. So that might be.
I put in a good audiobook, and that keeps me distracted.
What's nice is it does keep you safe, like if it's slippery. And then there are people that have the bathroom issues, maybe that's why they don't like running. And
yeah,
with the treadmill, obviously you can get off and go if you have to, which is kind of nice. Some people love to run and then they have that problem. So there's some bonuses to, getting it done that way. But
it's a nice variety to the impact. The impact is different on your joints.
Yeah. It's more cushiony. Or even when I start people, you said, you started walking, but I like to have people start on the elliptical a lot, because it mimics the run movement without the impact, which is really important. If they're getting started and they don't, maybe they have weight to lose, you want to just kind of keep it a little easier on the joints. Elliptical is a good way to start. So,
Yeah.
But it is a lot of bang for the buck. And I think that's, ultimately we want people out there doing it and doing it healthy. And I love that you talk a lot about the variety because it's so good to incorporate that. But thank you so much for your time today, for talking to us and sharing your love-hate relationship with running. And it sounds like you're still doing it. So the good things outweigh the bad, right? So that's good.
Yes. Well, I feel like I didn't even mention the hate part too much, but I have started and stopped running a dozen times probably.
So why did you stop running?
Because either I burnt out, I got to my goal and I finished, or life got in the way and I got lazy, or I had kids. But starting out again always is the hate part for me, because it is hard, and it's hard to breathe. Your body hurts, and you can't appreciate the good feeling you can get from running until you have put in enough effort to get to that point.
So people listening in, it's like, keep working. I mean, I think you said
at it. You'll get there.
Yeah, 3 to 4 miles. That's your magic, Yeah. And so I guess it's okay to be in that relationship where you hate love it, because there's so many benefits, and that's, I think, why we go back to it. But it's hard, and I guess hate's a strong word.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think sometimes reframing it in a different way can make it a more enjoyable thing. Because if you're saying to yourself, I hate this, it's not enjoyable at all. But if you're looking at, I know
this is hard, and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, thank you so much, and I appreciate your sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks.
Have a great day.
You too.
Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing good. So I was happy I wanted to participate, because I know when I knew you way back when, I don't remember running. So it's awesome to find out that you have picked it up. So tell us how you got started. I think you said you ran a little bit with your dad, and then you did all kinds of sports, and you wouldn't really run. And so tell me why you wouldn't really run, I guess, is where we should start.
To me, it just wasn't something enjoyable. Like, my dad did marathons growing up, and he ran. I remember running the track at like 4 years old, and he would tell me stories about how I was beating people on the track, and I could do it. And I just lost the interest, and there was other sports that were more interesting to me. Running was just kind of repetitive. Mm-hmm. I didn't like repetitive. So that's why I kind of jumped into other sports and then picked it up later. So.
And then, you told me that you picked it up later, just dealing with stress and anxiety, like 11 years ago. And is that still why you run now? Is like for that mental relief, or?
Yeah, it's for that mental relief. Also, there were some selfish reasons. My daughter was young and wouldn't take naps. And so when my older kids got home, she wouldn't go down for naps at all. And so I'm like, well, how can I get her to like take a nap? So I would just kind of put her in the stroller about an hour before the kids got out of school. And I just kind of started with walking, and then I started with running, and then started to kind of enjoy it. I'm like, oh, wow, I can get a lot done. And look, I got all my calories and, ran for the day. Like, this is great. You can get a ton of cardio in a short amount of time. So kind of picked it up that way, and then just stayed with it. So I don't know, kind of made it more fun for me to run. I kind of started doing like my own milestones and, things to kind of make it enjoyable. But yes, it was also for stress and anxiety, as I went through a divorce and then a lot of life changes. It was just easy to be able to get out there and run for an hour and just kind of let things go and leave it there, and then come back home and kind of face what I was needing to face. So it's kind of been a good stress reliever for me over the past 10 years as well. So
good. So you tell me you like to mix it up in your training and like keep it fun for yourself. Tell us about that, because I know people listening never love running probably, but maybe we can have a chance Get them.
Yeah. So out of school I was working at, they knew I ran. And so they asked if I would coach cross country. I'm like, well, I've never done it, but I'll do it. And I can't remember the name of the book that I got, but it was for coaching in specific for cross country coaches. And in one of them, they had a run that was called the Bubblegum Run. And I'm like, oh, that's a great run. We have a 4-miler coming up for the kids, and Walmart's like a 2-mile distance away. So I'm going to have them do a bubblegum run. So I gave them all a quarter and had them run up to the Walmart 2 miles away. And they had to get a piece of bubble gum out of those old little, machines that have the little twirly bubble gum things that go down, and they had to bring it back. Well, they all came back with their quarters. I'm like, what in the world do you guys do? And they said, well, we learned you could just take the top off the bubble gum machine and then just take as many bubble gum things as you wanted out. And here's your quarterback. So I'm like, what? But that was kind of like a great way to, we kind of mixed it up and doing fun things like that. And I would go out with them on runs after that. Like I didn't let them go by themselves anymore, but we started to build in some really fun things. And I started to find I was enjoying it, doing different trails or, for hill climbs, we had races, so now when I'm by myself, I kind of race myself or, just kind of fun, different things that kind of build in. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm going to run. There's a place a couple of miles away from me that I'm like, I'm going to stop and have breakfast and then I'll come back, kind of jog it back.
Before where I'm about 2 miles from the rec center. And so I run to the rec center, swim, and then run home. I've done that before and it breaks it up. It's fun that way too.
Yeah, it's hard. I used to also take my daughter up the canyon and we'd stop halfway through and she would get out and kind of play in the water because she would get kind of tired of, sitting in the stroller for that long. So we'd play and I'd make sure I was still walking. So I was staying warm and then put her back in and we'd run home. So, I mean, there's ways that you can still make it fun and be able to kind of chop up your run a little bit, but still make it enjoyable. So I've done things like that, but most of the time it's just kind of, because a lot of times it's kind of I only have an hour and I've got to get this run in and, and this time in. So yeah.
Nice to be time effective. I remember when my kids were little, they'd take swim lessons. And so I would just go swimming while they were in their lesson. And a lot of the other parents would just, chat on the side or whatever, which is really loud in there. You can't really hear each other. So you're yelling at each other. And so I thought, I'm just going to get something out of this instead of just stand there. And when my kids were little and they were in soccer, I'd run around the field while they're playing soccer or, just for practice, because you just sit there and watch. I mean, you got to be effective, I think. And so you get a lot of bang for your buck with running, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the cardio, and I think you have so many different workouts you can do. And now with like the watches and things, it's fun to be like, okay, I'm going to try to PR my 5 mile. And I've heard too, a lot of times, like when it gets repetitive, I'll reset my watch settings so that I'm kind of starting fresh and I'm not seeing my old times. I'm starting my times fresh, especially if I have an injury or have to stop. I have a couple of weeks where I'm like, I can't get out like I want to. I'll reset everything and kind of start fresh so that I'm not feeling like I'm picking up where I left off and, getting frustrated if I'm not going as fast as I want. So there's a lot of things you can do to make it fun and enjoyable, and still a lot of hard work, but it's fun.
Yeah. I mean, well, do you believe it when people say they actually love running?
I don't know. Probably. I think there are some people that absolutely love it. I do feel like that adrenaline high. I do not love my first mile, and I hate my first 2 miles in the winter because I just feel like they're just it's dreading. Then you kind of feel like you have, that time where like, oh, I have a couple miles, I feel really good. And then, then you're like, okay, I just want to get home. So I think that's always been that way. But, I would say I like it. I've stuck with it this long, and it's probably the one sport I've stuck with just as long as I have some of the others. So
why do you think that is?
I think because it's really easy to fit into a busy lifestyle. I have a very busy lifestyle. Like you said, I was like you, hey, it's a time I can go fit in a run while the kids are practicing. I've got 30, 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. So it is a lot easier to incorporate. I'm not having to leave my children all the time. A lot of times I'm right there still with them and just running, or taking them with me. So it's easy that way, I think, to incorporate that into your lifestyle.
So you say you don't necessarily love running, but you like the benefits, I would say, maybe, of running, I would say. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I love the benefits, and I'm competitive. So for me, I don't like workouts if I'm not being competitive, or if there's not some competitive thing that keeps me going back to it. So I feel like running offers that competitive edge where, like I said, a lot of times you can do so many different types of workouts, or hey, I'm gonna do hill climbs today, or I'm gonna go run the track today, and
which is
stuff like that.
well, it keeps you from getting burnt out too. So let me ask you this. So I understand that competitive spirit, because that's kind of what makes me, having had done it for so many years and competitively, it's really me being competitive with myself, not necessarily others, but I like to see what I can do. And I like the idea that you mentioned the PRs and stuff. So let me ask you this. You probably have this too. I'm just probably guessing. I have course records, for my own routes that I run.
Mm-hmm.
Commonly, I have little like records for that. I don't know if you do that.
No, I'm not that competitive.
Okay.
I'm not that way.
Myself, but it's kind of fun to like see what your fastest time on a loop is that you've done before. Actually, I did that before I had kids, and then because we've lived in the same house, and so I've been able to beat those times, and that it kind of is an encouraging thing, because after kids, a lot of people slow down, and so for me, being able to get back to the times I was before I had kids was like, oh, okay, it just made me feel a lot better, and it was in the exact same course or route, so I knew it was accurate, and it was me against me, which was kind of encouraging. So if you're listening in, and maybe there's an idea for you if you want to measure your route. And
yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'd also say too, I think that's also been the thing that's kept me in running as I've gotten older too, is that like you said, you're competing with yourself. And I don't do a ton of races just because it's really hard to fit those in. But, there's times where I'm like, I've got 2 hours. I'm just going to go run, 10 miles, a half today. I'm going to go do that and see where I land. And so you're competing against yourself. And as I get older, that's something that is an appeal to me, because I'm not having to compete against people who are younger than me, or feeling like I have to push myself harder some days than I know I should be pushing myself. So that's been an appeal to that too. So that I pace myself and I get to compete myself with myself.
Yeah, and you don't have to compete, like, absolutely. I mean, I think competition, what I like about competition, why I always encourage at least my athletes, obviously they usually are hiring me to train them for something. It's just a deadline that doesn't move, you are kind of, you commit to something, and people, when they pay a little bit for something, they're like, oh, I don't want people to see me do bad. So it does push them sometimes more than maybe they do on their own. But I like it, and I think it's inspiring that you'll push yourself regardless of racing or not. It's really just it's just for you. And I think that's what I love about running, is that it is time to yourself, and I was absolutely at all selfish for you to run. I mean, you were finding a way to manage that child and also get something in it for you. And it's just so good for your mind, at least for me, I think. So,
well, and it's a good example for your kids too. I think it's always been a good example that none of them have chosen running. Like, all of them have chosen different sports and things that they enjoy. But the kind of motto in our house is, I don't care what you do for physical activity, but you're going to do something. And they've seen from a young age that that's something that I've carved out and that I do for me. And that, that's kind of an expectation that they'll find something that they love and will keep active with. And that's the most important thing, is that you find something that will keep you active and that you'll continue to enjoy. So
I love that. That's my philosophy. My kids don't run either. Like, no, and I'm not going to make them. They have their own thing as long as they're active. There's lots of ways to enjoy fitness. It doesn't have to be running. Running is, I do find I do triathlon, so I do other sports too, but I find running is the most bang for the buck in terms of weight loss and things.
Yeah.
Also, you have risk of injury if you don't ease in. So definitely be smart with it. But
yeah,
definitely. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas and your insight.
You're welcome. Good to hear from you again. So
go way back. So it's
absolutely.
Great connect. Well, maybe I'll have to go on a run sometime.
Absolutely. Totally. We'll do it. Okay. We'll see ya.
Thanks so much, Traci.
Okay, thanks. All right. Bye-bye.
Hey, I'm glad we're able to connect. I loved your story when you told me that you wanted to be a firefighter since you were 8, and then you were hired on as a hotshot, which is way cool. Wildland crew, physical fitness is a big part of that job, and you pretty much, it's part of your job. If you don't do it, you're not going to keep your job. Is that right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So
yeah, the crew is made up of a lot of young guys and girls, And that's all it's based on, is your physical fitness, really.
So is that's sort of how you were introduced to trail running, would you say?
Definitely. I had been a swimmer and a water polo player my whole life. I was always in water sports, but I wanted to be a firefighter, and I saw a job opening. And on the job opening, it mentioned, okay, well, you need to maintain a certain level of fitness, which includes hiking and running. So I started running like 3 miles a day
Mm.
on flat surface, and I thought I was going to be pretty prepared for what I was in for, and I was blown away. I was
Because
not prepared.
trail, right? It was trail,
What'd you
right?
say?
Were you tested on the trail?
Yeah, like our third day at work, after finishing a bunch of paperwork, our crew superintendent, we're going for a run. I was like, okay, this is my time to shine.
Mhm.
And we headed out of crew camp and we hit this trail, and it went straight up for about 5 miles. And I was destroyed, dead last.
Mm.
I could barely breathe, choking down iron. And
Mm.
after that, we ran back to the station, and from then on out, every single day we would do a PT, which is physical training, for 2 hours a day, and it was either power hiking with a 45-pound pack, running these trails. And the rest of my crew, everyone was young, like young 20s, and I was the only girl, and I was about 24. So I was actually one of the older people on my crew, and
Mm.
everyone else on the crew had been doing cross country, or they'd had running in their previous fitness. And I was really far behind. And the
Mm.
way it worked on the crew was, if you came in last too many days in a row, you were going to get cut.
Oh,
Yeah.
that. So you pushed it. You had to push it.
Yeah, I would show up at crew camp at 3 a.m. and run for like an hour and a half in the morning to get extra miles in. Then I would stretch, drink a ton of water, and then
Mm.
we'd do our PTs. And it took me about 6 months before I wasn't dead last. So I was putting in extra miles to try to catch up to the rest of the crew. And I treated my time on the hotshot crew basically like it was my Olympic event every single day. I would go
Mm.
home from crew, stretch, eat, go to bed early, wake up, and do it all over again.
Did you like hate it?
I mean, I absolutely, the work that we got to do, I mean, it was my favorite chapter in the fire service. I worked for a municipal department, and I miss wildland. It was incredible. I mean, it the scenery that I got to see, the fires that I got to experience, the camaraderie on the crew, it was all just incredible. I mean, I was scared. I was it was my job every day. But no, it's a beautiful chapter in life.
That's great. Then, so you say you kind of fell in love with running, trail running, and like, how do you feel about it now?
At the time, well, so after I left crew, I got hired with the municipal department, and I went through a really, really dark period of life. Uh, the fire service wasn't what I hoped it would be, and I was in a new area. I had no friends. Everything was different. I moved out of my comfort zone, left my family. The weather was different. The scenery was different, and I needed an escape from work because I was really overloaded with what was going on in my life. And it just so happened that that winter that I moved to this new area, it was cold and it was raining, and I wasn't used to so much dark. And the only way I knew how to escape was to get out on the trails and just run. And I was running in the rain, in the mud, and I was running to decompress. And sometimes I'd run until I couldn't cry. It was a really depressing period of my life.
Mm.
And before I knew it, I was running 14 miles, 22 miles on the trail by myself. And I ran like that for a couple of years. And then I turned 30, and I
for myself, like my own personal goal. So I decided to get into ultra marathons. And then it just took off from there. And that's when I really found it became more of a passion and less of like therapy.
When did that, like, was there a real, like, a run that you kind of discovered? Did that happen for you, or was it just over time?
Well, I discovered that I could really regulate my emotions through running. Like I said earlier, sometimes I would run until I couldn't cry, and it was like a way of numbing out what I was going through. And then when I got into ultra marathons, I found a community with. And what I loved about it was I could push myself to these points of exhaustion, and then I'd find a second wind or a third or fourth or fifth wind, and it felt like I was escaping to a higher level, and I was surrounded by people that had that similar drive, and it created this like unsatiable appetite for like mileage. I want to go farther. I want to go farther. And now I mean, my runs now are like, I look forward to them. I dream about them. I just want to on the trail and run and escape. And that feeling of running downhill is almost to the point of flying. Like I feel weightless.
I love that. How far have you run? What is the longest run you've ever had?
I did a 50-mile race and I placed third. And
Nice.
that was probably that was like, it was the best run I've ever had. And I'm trying to get back there. Now I've had a daughter, so I'm kind of starting all over again. I wasn't one of those athletes that just bounces back quick from pregnancy. I gained a considerable amount of weight. And juggling a career and motherhood, I don't have the time to spend like I used to on the trails. So now running is such a precious moment of my day that I try to maximize my mileage. Yeah.
So
I'll get back there one day.
yeah, I mean, and there's seasons. I've been there where I had a lot of restrictions when I was having babies, and yeah, it was hard to go in and out of shape. I had five pregnancies, one in heaven, and then 4 kids, and then trying to raise them, and it's just a juggling act like you're talking about. But I think you do appreciate the time that you have to run or to yourself when you have an opportunity to run. And I know a lot of people stroll or run too, but in a way, it sounds like your journey, when you were first running, you were kind of in fear of losing your job. And then you kind of talked about how you, you started craving running. It almost sounds like it became more of a spiritual thing for you, more than just, a zen and a decompression and all that, but like a more of a higher plane of living. I kind of like that. Let's talk about that a little more.
Oh, absolutely. It's like I can show up to the trailhead and I'll have the weight of everything going on in my life, thoughts, stresses. And then by mile 8, it's like everything just gets real narrowed down to simplicity. It's like all I have to do is put one foot in front of the other and just breathe. And I start listening to what's going on the trail. I feel the wind in my face, and it grounds me back to reality that like everything is okay. And I get to just experience this moment for what it is. And I don't have to worry about social implications or a task ahead of me. It's simple and it's beautiful.
I love that. I feel that too. I love that you're talking about trail running too. Others that I've talked to, and it could be the trail, it could be the roads, it could be the track. It's wherever you want to find that time. I do think running has a way of like grounding us and helping us see, like, just like everything else falls away. Running is hard. And I think it puts everything into perspective. Like a dirty diaper doesn't seem to be a big deal anymore. Like, like the work stresses and stuff like you're talking about. I think we sometimes get so wrapped up in the worry that we're not present. And you really have to, especially on trails, you have to be very present or you're going to trip and fall. Like, I mean, you have to focus and concentrate on what you're doing at the time. And so I think additionally, trail running is even more beneficial to be in nature too.
Yeah, you can't carry very much weight when you're out on the trail. It seems to just fall off with every step.
Yeah, mentally, and I love that. I really like that component of it for sure. Well, I so appreciate you being willing to talk to me and share your thoughts and your life and some of your story with the people that are listening in. Maybe they can glean some, inspiration from you. And you can learn to love running, even if you started with it being kind of hard. It sounds like very fearful and difficult when people start. And some people hate it, but some people learn to love it, and it can be done. So really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. Be sure and check the show notes for resources or links that we mentioned in the show. You can also find them on my website at blonderunner.com. BLONDERUNNER.com. You can also find me on Instagram at The Blonde Runner with an E and Coach Laura Erickson, and that's LORA. Before you forget, I hope that you will follow this podcast and like it so you don't miss an episode. Also, it really helps if you leave a review so other people can find it, and share it with your friends. Until next time, live well.